The stars outside the wide glass window looked like frozen sparks, scattered in endless black. Commander Ryland stood still, hands folded behind his back, watching them. This was his last night on the military station called Haven's Edge. After 40 long years of war and duty, he was finally going home. Or so he thought. The hall behind him buzzed with voices and clinking glasses. Officers and soldiers from across the sectors had come to celebrate his retirement. They spoke of his victories, how he had saved outposts, defended colonies, and led fleets through impossible battles. Ryland smiled politely at their words, though inside he felt only silence. He was proud, yes, but also tired. Tired of commands, tired of blood, and tired of sleeping alone in cold metal rooms. When the High Council called him forward to give his farewell speech, he spoke softly. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me all these years. I only hope I gave the galaxy a little more peace than I found it." There was a pause, then laughter when one admiral raised a glass and shouted, "Name your retirement gift, Commander. Anything at all." Ryland had not planned an answer. He could have asked for credits or land or a ship. But the words slipped out before he could stop them. "One companion," he said, his voice low but steady. "One alien woman to talk to in my old age. Someone who remembers what silence means." The crowd roared with amusement, thinking it a joke. Even the council members smiled. The promise was made, half in humor, half in honor, and the celebration carried on into the artificial night. Ryland left quietly and returned to his empty quarters, thinking they would forget his strange request. But they did not. The next morning, he stood alone on docking bay 12, expecting nothing more than a formal handshake and a transport ticket back to Earth. The hangar was quiet except for the distant hum of the station's engines. A cold mist swirled along the floor as a single shuttle descended from orbit and landed with a soft hiss. The doors opened. 2 figures stepped out. Ryland blinked. His first thought was that they were statues, tall, still, and carved from moonlight. Their skin shimmered faint silver. Their eyes glowed like liquid gold. One stood straight with calm grace, her white hair flowing like smoke around her face. The other stood with her feet apart and shoulders tense, dark braids falling over a sharp, guarded expression. Not one, but 2. For a long moment, no one moved. Even the droids unloading cargo paused in silence. Ryland's heart thumped hard inside his chest. Something about them felt wrong. Not wrong like danger, but wrong like a broken rule. "I only asked for one," he said at last, his voice dry as dust. The station's liaison officer, who had come to deliver them, avoided his eyes. "The council sends its blessings," the man said quickly. "They are yours now, both." He gave a sharp salute and hurried back to the shuttle. Within seconds, the craft lifted off and vanished into the black sky. The hangar fell silent again, leaving Ryland standing with 2 strangers who stared at him without a word. He led them down the metal corridors toward his private quarters. The taller, calm one walked silently, eyes lowered, her steps like floating leaves. The other followed a few paces behind, her eyes darting like a trapped animal's, scanning every corner as if expecting attack. Neither spoke. People they passed stopped to stare. 2 alien women walking beside a human war hero. That would start rumors across the station by sunset. Ryland ignored the looks. He had learned long ago that silence was stronger than answers. Inside his quarters, he motioned toward the soft chairs near the viewport. "Sit, rest," he said. They obeyed without speaking. The quiet one folded her hands in her lap. The fierce one sat on the edge of the chair, tense like a coiled spring. Ryland could almost feel the electricity of her nerves. He poured 3 cups of warm synth tea and placed them on the table. Neither touched theirs. He did not push. He only watched them in the dim light, the stars drifting slowly behind the glass wall like silent witnesses. They were beautiful, yes, but it was not human beauty. It was something older, something shaped by a world where the wind sang in silver trees and the seas glowed at night. It was the kind of beauty that carried loneliness with it. Ryland leaned back in his chair. "I don't know why they sent 2, he said quietly, more to himself than to them. The fierce one's golden eyes flicked up, sharp and burning. For a moment, Ryland thought she might speak. Instead, she lowered her gaze again, jaw tight. The quiet one simply blinked, her expression unreadable. Ryland let the silence stay. But inside, something unsettled him. The council had sent him 2 alien women as if they were objects, a gift to honor his service. But their eyes were not the eyes of gifts. They were the eyes of people carrying secrets. And somewhere deep in Ryland's bones, a soldier's instinct whispered, this was not a gift. This was a warning. The soft hiss of the sliding door echoed as Ryland locked his quarters. The metallic sound seemed louder than usual, almost like a warning. The 2 alien women stood near the wide window, their shapes glowing faintly in the starlight. Ryland said nothing at first. He moved slowly around the room, checking the security panel, dimming the lights, and pretending to be calm. But his mind was racing. 2. They had sent 2, and no one had explained why. The taller, quiet one stood perfectly still. Her white hair shimmered like frost, drifting around her as if caught in invisible water. Her golden eyes stayed lowered, not from fear but from something deeper, something like grief. The other one was different. Her dark braids framed a face carved sharp with suspicion. Her body was coiled like a predator waiting to spring. Her eyes flicked across every object in the room, the ventilation panel, the food dispenser, the emergency escape lever, marking them all as if planning an exit. Ryland pretended to busy himself with making food. He opened a ration pack, heated it in the old unit, and placed the plates in front of them. Neither moved. The fierce one finally spoke. Her voice was low, rough, like stone dragged across metal. We do not eat human food. Ryland raised an eyebrow. Then tell me what you do eat. She said nothing more. The quiet one's lips parted slightly as if she might speak, but then she lowered her eyes again. Ryland sat opposite them. He let the silence stretch. Silence could be stronger than questions. Time crawled. The hum of the life support vents filled the air like slow breathing. Ryland studied them closely. Their clothes were strange, delicate fabrics that clung to their skin like mist but torn in places as if ripped during struggle. They wore no jewelry, carried no devices, and had no visible ID implants. That was unusual. Everyone in known space carried IDs. Do you have names? Ryland asked quietly. The fierce one's eyes narrowed. The quiet one answered instead, her voice like falling snow. I am Lise. Then after a pause, the fierce one said, and I am Kale. Ryland nodded. Lise, Kale, I'm Ryland. I don't know why you're here, they said. You are my retirement gift. Kale's lips twisted in something like disgust. Gifts do not breathe. Lise gently touched her arm, and Kale went silent again, but her eyes still burned. Night came slowly on the station. Outside the glass wall, the dying red star flickered like a fading ember. Ryland lay on his bunk, pretending to sleep. The 2 aliens sat near the window, whispering in their own language. He could not understand the words, but their tone was sharp, urgent. Then he caught 2 words spoken in broken standard. Escape. Deal. His eyes stayed closed, but every nerve in his body woke up. Escape. Deal. They had not come willingly. He shifted slightly, pressing the record button on the small device hidden in his sleeve. It made no sound, just blinked once and stored their voices. Kale's voice rose suddenly, sharp like a blade. Lise hushed her quickly, glancing toward Ryland's bunk. Ryland kept his breathing steady. Kale stepped closer, her shadow falling across him. For a moment he felt her presence like cold fire. He knew she was watching, testing if he was truly asleep. Seconds passed, then she stepped back. Ryland's fingers stayed still, but inside his heart thundered. Hours passed before they grew silent again. The 2 alien women curled up near the window like wild creatures, their eyes dim in the darkness. Ryland opened his eyes slowly. The room was silent, but his thoughts were not. These women were not gifts. They were something else, something hidden, and now they were in his room, and under his name. If anyone came searching for them, it would be his head on the line. Ryland stared up at the cold ceiling and whispered to himself, I need to know who you really are, before it's too late. The station moved silently through the void, but Ryland's mind refused to rest. The red star outside his window burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Kale and Lise were curled up on the floor near the heating panel. They slept lightly like wild animals ready to leap awake. Their breathing was soft, almost soundless. Yet Ryland could not sleep at all. The words he had overheard kept repeating in his mind. Escape. Deal. Rylan lay still on his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His fingers traced the hidden recorder tucked into his sleeve. It held every whispered word from the last hour. When morning came, he would send it to an old friend in the translation corps, quietly, secretly, but morning felt far away. He rolled silently from his bunk and crossed the room. Every step was careful. The floor panels groaned softly beneath his boots, and he paused each time until Kale's breathing steadied again. He stopped near them and crouched low. In the dim red light, their faces looked strange, beautiful but marked with exhaustion. They were not soldiers. They were not trained agents. But their fear was real and deep. And fear always meant danger was close. He moved to the security panel by the door and dimmed the lights further until only the faint glow of the star rimmed the edges of their shapes. Then he activated a silent scan. A thin beam swept across their bodies, invisible to the naked eye. Rylan watched the readout on the panel. No weapons. No trackers. No ID chips. That was impossible. Everyone had ID chips, even black market smugglers. Whoever sent them here had erased their existence from every system. Rylan's stomach tightened. They were ghosts. A soft sound made him turn. Lise was awake. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark as they opened and found his. She did not move or speak, just watched him silently. Rylan stayed still too, caught in her gaze. Then slowly, she placed a single finger to her lips. Silence, and closed her eyes again. Rylan stood frozen. It was not the gesture of someone afraid of him. It was the gesture of someone afraid of something else, something outside this room. He backed away slowly, returning to his bunk without a word. For hours, the room stayed wrapped in shadows. The hum of the life support vents was the only sound. When the ship's clock finally ticked to morning, Rylan rose and slipped quietly into the washroom. He splashed cold water on his face and stared at his own tired eyes in the mirror. Who are they? Why were they given to me? He could feel the answer coming closer, like a storm crawling over the horizon. A sharp tone from the door made him flinch. A delivery drone hovered outside. No human messenger, just a silent machine with a black case attached. Rylan opened it. Inside lay 2 delicate crystal bands, bracelets engraved in unknown runes. A note flashed on the drone's display. For the companions, gift from the council. Then the drone turned and zipped away without another word. Rylan carried the case back to the main room. Kale and Lise were both awake now, standing near the window. When Kale saw the bracelets, her face darkened with fury. She stepped back as if they were weapons. Lise reached out with trembling fingers but did not touch them. They mark us, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Kale spat the words like fire. They brand us, so we cannot run. Rylan stared at them. So it was true. These women were not gifts, they were prisoners. He set the case down and stepped back. You don't have to wear them, he said quietly. Lise looked at him with wide eyes. If we don't, they will come. Who? Rylan asked. Kale's golden eyes locked on his. Hunters. The word cut the air like a blade. Rylan felt the soldier in him wake up again. Something very dangerous had been dropped into his life, wrapped as a gift, tied with lies. Now he was tangled in it. And outside, somewhere in the darkness of space, someone was already coming to take them back. The alarms began as a low hum, so faint that Rylan almost thought it was part of his dream. Then they rose, fast and sharp like metal screaming through the air. Red lights burst across the ceiling. The station's voice boomed through the speakers. Incoming ships unregistered, lockdown engaged. Rylan shot upright. Kale and Lise were already awake, standing by the window, their golden eyes glowing like molten metal. Kale whispered something in her language, quick and sharp. Heiss's face went pale. Tell me what's happening, Rylan demanded. Kale didn't look at him. They found us. Rylan crossed the room in 3 long steps and hit the console. A holographic map flared to life, showing the station's outer rim. 3 black ships had slipped out from the shadows of the dying red star. They flew low and silent, their signals jammed, their IDs erased. Predators. Rylan had seen ships like that before, during the Shadow Wars, bounty hunters. His heart hammered. He turned to the 2 alien women. Are they after you? Kale's jaw tightened. Yes, Lise whispered. They will burn this station to ash if we stay. Another alarm wailed. A shockwave rattled the walls as the hunters fired warning blasts across the station's shield. The floor shook. Lights flickered. Somewhere far below, metal screamed as a docking bay took a direct hit. Ryland's soldier instincts took over. "Move!" he snapped. He grabbed a small pulse pistol from the locker and tossed 2 thermal cloaks at them. "Put these on, now." Kale obeyed fast, wrapping herself in the cloak with sharp motions. Lisa's hands trembled as she fastened hers. The station's voice roared again. "Breach in Sector 7. All personnel to safe zones." They ran. Ryland led them through narrow back corridors away from the main traffic flow. Soldiers and officers rushed in the opposite direction, heading to defense posts, not noticing the 3 shadowed figures slipping against the walls. Kale kept close behind him, her steps silent and controlled. Lee stumbled once and Kyle caught her without breaking stride. They reached the maintenance level, silent, cold, empty. The station shook again as another blast hit. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Ryland stopped at a locked bulkhead and keyed in an old access code from his service days. The door hissed open, revealing the hidden launch bay. Inside sat an old stealth shuttle, dark and dusty, forgotten by the current crew. "This is your plan?" Kale hissed. "It's the only way," Ryland answered. Kale's eyes flashed, but she said nothing more. Lee stepped inside the shuttle, her hands trailing across the old metal as if feeling its memories. "It will fly," she whispered softly, almost like a prayer. Ryland powered up the systems. The console flickered, groaned, then came alive with a dull glow. The engines hummed. Kale strapped in beside him. Liz took the seat behind them, clutching her cloak around her like armor. Ryland spoke into the comms. "Control, this is Commander Ryland requesting emergency departure authorization. Static." Then a burst of code came through, scrambled and broken. The hunters had jammed communications. They were on their own. The outer door creaked open. The black void of space stared back like an open mouth. Ryland gritted his teeth. "Hold tight." The shuttle shot out of the bay like a silver dart, the station shrinking behind them. Almost at once, the hunters turned. 3 dark ships curved through the starlight, engines howling. Plasma fire streaked past the shuttle, white-hot lines carving across the void. Kyle swore in her language. Lice gasped, clutching her seat. "Stay low," Ryland muttered, diving the shuttle through a drifting field of shattered asteroids. Rock and metal spun around them. The hunters followed, closing fast. A blast hit the wing. The shuttle jolted, alarm screaming. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Liz cried out. Kale's hands flew across the auxiliary controls, rerouting power. "Shield is falling," she barked. "I know," Ryland growled. He yanked the controls, flipping the shuttle sideways through a narrow crack between 2 spinning boulders. The hunters scraped the rocks behind them, showers of sparks exploding in the dark. The shuttle broke free of the field and shot into deep black. The hunters regrouped, forming a triangle, herding them like wolves. Kale's eyes met Ryland's. For the first time, she looked not fierce, but desperate. "They will not stop," Ryland's voice hardened. "Then neither will I." Far behind, the dying red star faded to a dim ember. Ahead was only darkness, and in that darkness the hunt had begun. The shuttle tore through the black like a wounded arrow, leaving behind faint trails of heated dust. Inside, the small cabin shook with every sharp turn. Warning lights blinked across the console, painting the 3 faces in flashes of red. Ryland's hands gripped the controls like steel. Kale crouched beside him, her dark braids swinging as she rerouted power to the engines. Lee sat behind them, arms wrapped around her knees, whispering soft words in her language like a fading lullaby to herself. 3 hunter ships still followed close behind, black shapes like blades, gliding silently through the void. Their movements were too sharp, too precise. They were not chasing. They were herding, and Ryland knew it. "They want to trap us," he said through clenched teeth. Kale's eyes narrowed. "Then break the trap." Ryland almost smiled. He liked her fire. He yanked the shuttle into a sudden dive toward a vast swirl of silver gas clouds spinning far below. The grav field pulled at the shuttle like invisible claws. "Are you insane?" Kale shouted. "Probably," Ryland said. "Hold on." The shuttle plunged into the nebula. The world outside turned into glowing fog. Lightning flickered inside the clouds, painting their path in blue-white flashes. Static filled the comms. Sensors went blind, hearsight was useless. Instinct was all they had. The hunters followed anyway, silent and relentless. Their dark hulls sliced through the glowing mist like shadows with teeth. Kale cursed under her breath. They can see us. They must have heat locks. Then give them something hotter, Ryland said. She blinked at him, then understood. She grabbed the emergency flares from the side panel. One by one, she shot them out the rear hatch, white-hot fireballs that screamed through the fog. The hunter's sensors caught them instantly. 2 ships veered off, firing at the decoys. The third stayed on them. Ryland snarled. Persistent. A bolt of plasma ripped past their hull, close enough to shake the shuttle. Sparks showered from the ceiling. Lice screamed softly, clutching her seat straps. Ryland's jaw tightened. Liz, do you know any safe routes out of here? Hidden paths? She hesitated, eyes wide. Then slowly she reached into her cloak and pulled out a small crystal slab glowing faint blue. Starlines shimmered across it, a secret map. My mother gave me this, she whispered. Old royal paths. Forgotten lanes. Show me, Ryland said quickly. She slid the map into the nav port. The console flickered, then redrew the space grid, revealing thin, twisting lanes hidden between gravity fields, known only to ancient, starborn ships. Ryland's eyes lit up. Perfect. He dove into one of the hidden lanes. Gravity swirled around them like invisible rivers. The shuttle screamed as it slipped through razor-thin gaps between collapsed stars and dormant wormholes. The hunter behind them tried to follow, then hit a false gravity pocket. Its hull twisted. The ship spun and smashed into a drifting ice rock, exploding in silent fire. Kale's lips curled in satisfaction. One less. Ryland didn't celebrate. 2 more will regroup soon. We keep moving. Lise stared at him, her golden eyes glowing with a mix of fear and wonder. You could have left us. Ryland kept his eyes on the stars. Could have. Didn't. They burst out of the nebula into open black space. The hunters were distant dots now, struggling to catch up. The shuttle rattled, engines groaning from the stress, but it still flew. Kyle sank into her seat, chest rising and falling fast. You're either very brave or very stupid, human. Little of both, Ryland said. For the first time, Kale gave him a small smile, quick and sharp, but real. Lisa's soft voice floated from behind them. You saved us, Ryland didn't answer. But something in his face softened. Ahead stretched endless darkness, uncharted and silent. Behind, the hunters were growing smaller, fading like old nightmares. For the first time since they had arrived, the 2 alien women looked less like prisoners and more like companions. Ryland let out a slow breath, his hand steady on the controls. They had escaped, for now. But this was only the beginning. The hidden moon rose from the darkness like a shattered pearl, broken cliffs, deep craters, and long shadows stretching over frozen stone. Ryland guided the shuttle down carefully, its landing struts creaking as they touched the cracked surface. Silence wrapped around them. No lights, no signals, no life. For the first time in days, the sky above was still. They stepped out together. The cold air bit at their skin. Kale scanned the horizon with wary eyes, her cloak whipping in the thin wind. Lice tilted her face up toward the stars, golden eyes glowing softly as if soaking in their light. Ryland stood between them, shoulders heavy, eyes sharp. He had spent years fighting wars, commanding fleets, standing on bridges of fire. But this was different. Now he wasn't protecting soldiers. He was protecting 2 lives that should have never been placed in danger. They found an old mining outpost built into the cliffside. The place was half buried in dust and silence, its power grid long dead. Ryland forced open the doors and the 3 of them slipped inside. The air was stale and cold, but it was shelter. Cal searched every room like a predator, moving with silent precision. She checked vents, corners, even the ceiling pipes. Only after she was sure it was safe did she lower her guard. Liz moved gently, her steps soundless, her hands brushing over ancient walls as if feeling their memories. Ryland powered up a small field generator. Faint golden light filled the room. The chill faded a little. They were safe. For now. Time passed slowly on the moon. Ryland worked on repairing the shuttle using old mining tools and bits of broken machinery. Sparks danced around him while Kale handed him parts without being asked, quiet but watchful. At first they spoke little. Silence was their language, but slowly cracks formed in the walls between them. Kale began asking short questions about the tools, about human starships, about why he stayed. Ryland answered honestly, You could leave us, Cale said once, tightening a bolt. I could, Rylan replied, not looking up. But then I'd just be another soldier following orders. Cale studied him for a long time, saying nothing. But her eyes softened slightly. Lys, meanwhile, spent hours sketching glowing lines across the floor with bits of mineral dust. At first, Rylan thought she was just passing time. Then he realized she was drawing constellations, maps of her lost world. One evening as he worked near her, she whispered, "The sea on my planet glows when the night creatures rise." "The water sings," Rylan set down his wrench. "Sounds beautiful." It was. Her voice cracked like thin glass. She quickly brushed the star map away. Dust scattering like faint sparks. Rylan said nothing. But his chest felt heavy. Nights on the moon were long and silent. They sat near the old heating coil wrapped in blankets. Rylan told them small stories of Earth. Rain on tin roofs, warm bread, the smell of pine forests. Lys listened like a child hearing fairy tales. Cale pretended not to listen, but her eyes grew distant, softer. They taught him things too, strange alien lullabies, gestures of greeting, how to read moods in the color shifts of their eyes. For the first time in years, Rylan felt something he had forgotten, peace, but it could not last. One night, as they rested, the warning sensor on the shuttle blinked faint red. A faint signal swept across the moon's surface like a shadow passing over their hiding place. Cale stiffened instantly. "They are searching," Lys's voice trembled. "They will find us." Rylan rose slowly, his soldier's calm returning like an old cloak. "Then we don't wait for them to come," he said. "We choose where the fight begins." Kyle's eyes met his. This time there was no distrust in them, only fierce trust. Lys stood close, golden eyes bright with fear and hope. And in that moment, Rylan realized something strange. They were no longer his burden. They were his crew, his family, and he would burn the stars themselves to keep them safe. The sky above the broken moon was black and endless, but Rylan could feel the hunters out there, circling in silence, waiting. The shuttle's sensor pulse had confirmed it, 2 ships closing in fast. They had found them. Rylan stood outside the old mining outpost, the cold wind cutting against his face. His hands were steady, but his heart felt heavy. He had known this day would come. They could not run forever. Inside, Cale was sharpening a broken mining blade with slow, steady strokes. Sparks jumped with each scrape. Lys packed the few supplies they had. Food rations, spare cloaks, fragments of star maps. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were steady. Rylan entered and closed the door behind him. The room fell silent. "They'll be here in less than an hour," he said. Lys's lips parted, but no words came. Kyle rose and met his gaze. "Then we fight." Rylan nodded slowly. There was no fear in her voice, only fire. They made their plan quickly, like soldiers who had fought together for years. Cale would take the mining tunnels and plant the old plasma charges they found in the supply lockers. Lys would stay on the ridge as lookout, guiding their timing using her crystal star map's sensor glow. Rylan would pilot the shuttle out into open space as bait, drawing the hunters away, then leading them straight into the collapsing debris field orbiting the moon. It was dangerous, reckless, but it was their only chance. The sky darkened as the hunters arrived. 2 black ships glided down like silent predators, their hulls drinking the starlight. Red scan beams swept across the cliffs, cutting through the darkness like knives. Rylan stood on the shuttle's ramp, looking up at them. He remembered battlefields. He remembered soldiers who followed him without question. He remembered what it meant to protect someone, not for orders, not for duty, but because they mattered. He looked toward the ridge where Lys stood small and shining in the darkness. Then he looked toward the tunnels where Cale vanished like a shadow with her blade and her fire, and he smiled. Not the smile of a tired soldier, the smile of someone with something to fight for. The shuttle roared to life and shot off the moon's surface, engines screaming. The hunters lunged after it at once, black shapes slicing through space. Rylan darted between chunks of frozen rock, skimming close to their jagged edges. Plasma blasts flashed behind him, lighting the void. Kyle's voice crackled through the comms. "Charges ready." Lys's voice followed, soft but sharp. "They are almost in position. 10 more seconds." Rylan drew the hunters deeper, weaving through the spinning debris. He could almost feel their weapons locking on. Then Lys's voice rang out, "Now!" Cale triggered the charges. The asteroid field erupted in blinding light. Shards of burning stone spun like a storm of knives. The first hunter ship shattered instantly, ripped apart by the blast. The second swerved, lost control, and smashed into a massive rock, bursting into silent fire. Debris filled the void, glowing like dying stars. Ryland pulled up hard, the shuttle shaking as he skimmed over the destruction. Then there was only silence, no pursuit, no hunters, only stars. He returned to the moon slowly, the shuttle battered but alive. Kale was waiting at the landing pad, smoke streaked across her face, her dark braids loose and wild. Lise ran to them as the ramp opened, eyes bright with tears and starlight. They were safe, truly safe. Later they stood together on the cliff, watching the red star fade low on the horizon. "We are free now," Lise whispered. Kale nodded, though her eyes stayed on Rylan. "Where will you go, human?" Rylan looked at them both, at the two lives that had been forced on him as gifts, and had become something far more. "I was supposed to retire," he said quietly. "Grow old alone on some quiet planet," he paused, then smiled. "But I think I'd rather start over. With you." Lisa's golden eyes filled with light. Kale gave a small, rare smile, fierce and soft at once. They stepped closer, one on each side, and for the first time Rylan did not feel like a soldier. He felt like a man who had found home. And somewhere deep in the silent stars, the galaxy felt just a little brighter.